Warriors Into the Wild, Chapter 9, Part 1. "I'd go and see Yellowfang if I were you," whispered Graypaw, as Longtail strode away. "She doesn't look very happy." Firepaw glanced over at the old she-cat. She was still lying beside the high rock. Graypaw was right. She was glaring at him. "Well, here goes," he mewed. "Wish me luck. You'll need the whole of StarClan on your side for this one," answered Graypaw. "Call out if you need a hand. If she looks like she's going to have you, I'll sneak up behind her and whack her on the head with a stiff rabbit." Firepaw purred with amusement and trotted off toward Yellowfang. His cheerfulness quickly evaporated as he neared the injured queen. The old clat was clearly in a terrible mood. She hissed a warning and showed her teeth. "Stop right there, kitty pet." Firepaw sighed. It seemed he was in for a fight. He was still hungry and beginning to feel tired. He longed to curl up in his nest for an afternoon nap. The last thing he wanted was to argue with this pitiful clump of fur and teeth. "You can call me what you like," he mewed wearily. "I'm just following Blue Star's orders." "You are a kitty pet, though, aren't you?" Yellowfang wheezed. "She's tired, too," Firepaw thought. There was less fire in her voice, although her spite was as strong as ever. "I used to live with two legs when I was a kitten," Firepaw replied calmly. "Your mother a kitty pet? Your father a kitty pet?" "Yes, they were." Firepaw looked down at the ground, feeling resentment burn inside him. It was bad enough that members of his own clan still viewed him as an outsider. He certainly didn't have to answer this foul-tempered prisoner. Yellowfang seemed to take his silence as an invitation to go on. "Kitty pet blood is not the same as warrior blood. Why don't you run home to your two legs now instead of looking after me? It's humiliating being fussed over by a low-born cat like you." Firepaw's patience ran out. He snarled, "You'd still feel humiliated if I were warrior-born. You'd feel ashamed whether I was a precious she-cat from your own clan or a wrenched two-leg that had picked you off the ground." He lashed his tail from side to side. "It's the fact that you need to rely on any cat that you find so humiliating." Yellowfang stared at him. Her orange eyes were wide. Firepaw carried on fiercely. "You're just going to have to get used to being cared for until you are well enough to look after yourself, you spiteful old bone bag." He stopped as Yellowfang began to make a low, harsh, wheezing sound. Alarmed, Firepaw took a step toward her. The she-cat was trembling all over, and her eyes had narrowed into tiny slits. Was she having some kind of a fit? "Look, I didn't mean," he began, before he suddenly realized that she was laughing. "Meow, ow, ow," she mewed, a purr rumbling up from deep inside her chest. Firepaw didn't know what to do. "You have spirit, kitty pet," Yellowfang croaked, stopping at last. "Now, I'm tired and my leg hurts. I need sleep and something to put on this wound. Go and find that pretty little medicine cat of yours and ask her for some herbs. I think you'll find a goldenrod poultice would help. And while you're at it, I wouldn't mind a few poppy seeds to chew on. The pain is killing me." Stunned by her change of mood, Firepaw turned quickly and sprinted towards Spotted Leaf's den. He had never been in this part of the camp before. With his ears pricked, he padded through a cool green tunnel of ferns that led into a small grassy clearing. A tall rock stood at one side, split down the middle by a crack wide enough for a cat to make its den inside. Out of this opening trotted Spotted Leaf. As usual, she looked bright-eyed and friendly, her dappled coat gleaming with 100 shades of amber and brown. Firepaw shyly mewed greeting and reeled off Yellowfang's list of herbs and seeds. "I've got most of these in my den," replied Spotted Leaf. "I'll fetch some marigold leaves, too. If she dresses her wound with that, it'll keep off any infection. Wait here." "Thanks," Firepaw mewed as the medicine cat disappeared back into her den. He strained his eyes, trying to catch a glimpse of her inside, but the den was too dark to see anything. He could only hear the sound of rustling and smell the heady scents of unfamiliar herbs. Spotted Leaf emerged from the gloom and dropped a bundle folded in leaves by Firepaw's feet. "Tell Yellowfang to go easy on the poppy seeds. I don't want her to deaden the pain entirely. A little pain can be useful, as it will help me judge how well she is healing." Firepaw nodded and picked up the herbs with his teeth. Thanks, Spotted Leaf, he mewed through the mouthful of leaves, then headed back through the fern tunnel into the main clearing. Tiger Claw was sitting outside the warrior's den watching him closely. As Firepaw trotted over to Yellowfang carrying the herbs, he could feel the amber-eyed stare burning on the back of his neck. He turned his head and looked at Tiger Claw curiously. The warrior narrowed his eyes and looked away. Firepaw dropped the bundle beside Yellowfang. Good, she meowed. Now, before you leave me in peace, find me something to eat. I'm starving. The sun had risen 3 times since Yellowfang had entered the camp. Firepaw woke early and nudged Graypaw, who was still asleep beside him, his nose tucked under his thick tail. Wake up, Firepaw mewed, or you'll be late for training. Graypaw lifted his head sleepily and growled in reluctant agreement. Firepaw prodded Ravenpaw. The black cat opened his eyes immediately and leaped to his feet. What is it? He mewed, looking around wildly. Calm down, Ravenpaw. It's time for training soon, Firepaw soothed. Dustpaw and Sandpaw began to stir too, in their mossy nests on the far side of the den. Firepaw stood up and pushed his way out of the ferns. The morning was warm. Firepaw could see a deep blue sky through the leaves and branches that overhung the camp. Today, however, a heavy dew glistened on the fern fronds and sparkled on the grass. Firepaw sniffed the air. Greenleaf was drawing to a close, and soon it would start to feel colder. He lay down and rolled in the earth beside the tree stump, stretching his legs and tipping his head back to rub on the cool ground. Then he flipped over onto his side and looked across the clearing to see if Yellowfang was awake yet. She had been given a resting place at the other end of the fallen tree where the elders gathered to eat. Her nest lay tucked against its mossy trunk, out of hearing of the elders, but in full view of the warrior's den across the clearing. Firepaw could see a mound of pale gray fur rising and falling in time to gentle rumble of sleep. Graypaw trotted out of the den behind him, followed by Sandpaw and Dustpaw. Ravenpaw appeared last, with a nervous glance around the clearing before he emerged fully into the open. Another day looking after this mangy old flea bag, Firepaw? Mewed Dustpaw. I bet you wish you were out training with us. Firepaw sat up, shook the dust from his fur. He wasn't going to let himself get annoyed by Dustpaw's taunts. Don't worry, Firepaw, murmured Graypaw. Blue Star will have you back in training before long. Perhaps she thinks a kitty pet is better off staying in camp, tending to the sick, mewed Sandpaw rudely, tossing her sleek ginger head and throwing him a scornful look. Firepaw decided to ignore her barbed comments. What is White Storm teaching you today, Sandpaw? He mewed. We're doing battle training today. He's going to teach me how a real warrior fights, Sandpaw replied proudly. Lionheart's taking me to the great sycamore, mewed Graypaw, to practice my climbing. I'd best go. He'll be waiting. I'll come with you to the top of the ravine, mewed Firepaw. I have to catch breakfast for Yellowfang. Coming, Ravenpaw? Tiger Claw must have something planned for you. Ravenpaw sighed and nodded, then followed Graypaw and Firepaw as they trotted out of camp. Even though his injury was completely healed, he still seemed to have little enthusiasm for warrior training. Here, mewed Firepaw. He dropped a large mouse and a chaffinch onto the ground beside Yellowfang. About time, she growled. The she-cat still had been sleeping when Firepaw had entered the camp after his hunting trip, but the smell of fresh kill must have woken her, for now she had pulled herself into a sitting position. She dropped her head and hungrily gulped down Firepaw's offering. She had developed a massive appetite as her strength returned. Her wound was healing well, but her temper remained as fierce and unpredictable as ever. She finished her meal and complained. The base of my tail itches, like fury, but I can't reach it. Give it a wash, will you? With an inward shudder, Firepaw crouched down and set to work. As he cracked the plump fleas beneath his teeth, he noticed a gang of small kits tumbling in the dusty earth nearby. They were mauling each other and fighting, sometimes quite viciously. Yellowfang had closed her eyes as Firepaw groomed her, half opened one eye to observe the kits as they played. To his surprise, Firepaw felt her spine stiffen beneath his teeth. He listened for a moment to the tiny yelps and squeaks of the kits. Feel my teeth broken, Star? mewed one small tabby. He leaped onto the back of a little gray and white kit who was pretending to be Shadow Clan leader. The two kits bundled toward the high rock. Suddenly, the gray and white cat gave a mighty heave and flung the tabby from his back. With a startled squeak, the little tabby cannoned into Yellowfang's side. Instantly, the old she-cat leaped to her feet, fur on end, spitting violently. "Stay away from me, you scrap of fur," she hissed. The tabby kit took one look at the furious cat, turned tail, and ran. He hid himself behind a tabby queen who was staring furiously across the clearing at Yellowfang. The gray and white kit froze where he stood. Then, paw by paw, he cautiously backed away toward the safety of the nursery. Yellowfang's reaction had shocked Firepaw. He thought he'd seen her at her most vicious when they fought after their first meeting, but her eyes burned with a new rage now. "I think the kits are finding it hard being confined to camp," he mewed cautiously. "They're getting restless." "I don't care how restless they are," growled Yellowfang. "Just keep them away from me." "Don't you like kits?" Firepaw asked, curious in spite of himself. "Did you never have kits of your own?" "Don't you know medicine cats don't have kits?" hissed Yellowfang ferociously. "But I heard you were a warrior before that," Firepaw ventured. "I have no kits," Yellowfang spat. She snatched her towel away from him and sat up anyway. Her voice suddenly lowered, and she sounded almost wistful. "Accidents seem to happen to kits when I'm around them." Her orange eyes clouded with emotion. She laid her chin flat on her forepaws and stared ahead. Firepaw watched her shoulders sink as she released a long, silent sigh. Firepaw looked at her curiously. What could she mean? Was the old she-cat being serious? It was hard to tell. Yellowfang seemed to swing from mood to mood so quickly. He shrugged himself and went on with the grooming. "There are a couple of ticks I couldn't pull out," he told her when he had finished. "I should hope you didn't even try, you idiot," snapped Yellowfang. "I don't want any tick heads embedded in my rear, thank you very much. Ask Spotted Leaf for a little mouse bile to rub on them. A splash of that in their breathing holes, and they'll soon loosen their grip." I'll get some now," Firepaw offered. He was glad of a chance to get away from the grumpy cat for a while, and it was certainly no hardship to go and see Spotted Leaf again. He walked toward the fern tunnel. Cats crossed the clearing around him, carrying sticks and twigs in their teeth. While he had been grooming Yellowfang, the camp had grown active. It had been like this every day since Blue Star had not announced Wild Clan's disappearance. The queens were weaving twigs and leaves into a dense green wall around the sides of the nursery, making sure that the narrow entrance was the only way in and out of the bramble patch. Other cats were working at the edges of the camp, filling in any space in the thick undergrowth. Even the elders were busy, scraping out a hole in the ground. Warriors filed steadily past, piling pieces of fresh kill beside them, ready to be stored inside the newly dug hole. There was an air of quiet concentration, a determination to make the clan as secure and well supplied as possible. If Shadow Clan made a move on their territory, Thunder Clan would shelter inside the camp. They would not let themselves be driven from their hunting grounds as easily as Wind Clan had been. Darkstripe, Longtail, Willowpet, and Dustpaw were waiting silently at the camp entrance. Their eyes were fixed on the opening of the gross tunnel. A patrol was just returning, dusty and paw-sore. As soon as the warriors entered the camp, Darkstripe and his companions approached and exchanged words with them. Then they slipped quickly out of camp. ThunderClan's borders were not being left unguarded for a moment. Firepaw headed down the fern tunnel that led to Spotted Leaf's den. As he entered the clearing, he could see Spotted Leaf was preparing some sweet-smelling herbs. "Can I have some mouse bile for Yellowfang's ticks?" Firepaw mewed. "In a moment," replied Spotted Leaf, pawing 2 piles of herbs together and mixing the fragrant heap with one delicately extended claw. "Busy?" Firepaw asked, settling down on a warm patch of earth. "I want to be prepared for any casualties," Spotted Leaf murmured, glancing up at him with her clear amber eyes. Firepaw met her gaze for a moment, then looked away, an uncomfortable feeling prickling in his fur. Spotted Leaf turned her attention back to the herbs. Firepaw waited, happy to sit quietly and watch her at work. "Right," she mewed at last. What was it you wanted? Mouse bile?